The truth did not explode. It arrived like a cold hand on my throat. I am Mara Ellison, 34, a hospice nurse in Asheville. I rent a small duplex with peeling paint and stubborn windows. I iron my scrubs at night and stack my bills on the fridge with a magnet shaped like an apple. I have a mother who counts her blessings aloud and a younger brother who never learned to count his own. Until last winter, I believed love meant covering for both of them, no matter the cost. My father died 2 years ago after a long, quiet illness. He left no life insurance, only half-finished birdhouses, and a garage that smelled like cedar. Mother said there had been nothing to save. We sold the old truck, cleared the credit cards, swallowed the shame in small, bitter sips. I took extra shifts. Theo, my brother, tried real estate for 6 difficult months and then returned to his comfortable disasters. Mother called them experiments, her word for the wreckage he left behind. A week before Christmas, the heat in my duplex sputtered out. The landlord answered my texts with a shrug in emoji form. I wrapped myself in 2 sweaters and baked potatoes just to warm the kitchen. I picked up another shift and told no one. On my way to the hospice that night, I stopped by my mother's house to drop off a pan of lasagna. She was in the dining room, lights low, the cloth runner aligned like a runway. Her gratitude spilled in practiced phrases. My eyes rested on the china cabinet, polished to a soft spill of light, and then on her purse sitting open on the table. "Stay for tea," she said, already clinking spoons. "I'm late," I said, and leaned to kiss her cheek. The purse gaped. Inside, a ribbon of paper glowed pale against the leather. I saw the logo first, a mountain silhouette used by Blue Ridge Credit Union. The number beneath it snagged my breath. It was a balance, heavy and impossible, sitting there like a stone in the riverbed of her life. I knew the logo because my own account there lived in single digits more often than not. The number was 5 digits long, not counting the cents, a quiet fortune by our family's standards. I told myself I had misread. I told myself it was a deposit slip, or a charity receipt, or anything that would make sense. Mother snapped the clasp shut, smiling calmly, and carried the teacups into the kitchen. My heart beat in my throat like a trapped bird. Outside, the air cut my lungs. In the car, the dashboard light made everything look staged and counterfeit. While the engine warmed, I watched the house and felt something large and old shift inside me. Father had kept shoeboxes of receipts, even when money was low. He believed the record was sacred. Maybe that is why the shadow of those numbers held me. At the hospice, the night moved softly around grief. I adjusted blankets, timed medications, wrote notes in neat, squared letters. Between rooms, the image of the receipt flickered like a lighthouse blade. When the morning broke faint and gray, I knew I could not unknow what I had seen. I called Mother on my way home and asked about her weekend plans. She sounded light, relieved that I cared. "Christmas shopping," she said, "if the weather behaves." My mouth filled with a metallic taste. I hung up and sat in my driveway with the engine off. I looked at the list magnet to my fridge through the kitchen window and felt the first spark catch. Something did not match. There was a ledger here, and it was out of balance. I tried to file the moment away as a misunderstanding, the way you mishear a lyric and sing it wrong for years. But the number kept returning, patient and exact, like a clock chime in an empty church. I moved through my days as if the floorboards might tilt. At work I smiled, my voice even and steady, my hands sure. At home, I made lists that did not help. The consequences were small at first. Shopping with Mother, she waved off my offer to pay for coffee with a tight smile. "You work too hard," she said, tucking her card back into her wallet as if it were fragile. Theo borrowed her car and returned it with a new dent above the headlight. She laughed, called it a signature, and asked if I had plans for Christmas Eve. When I suggested a small dinner, she said we should do something special for Theo, a man who needed cheering, a soul who bruised easily. I had learned, over years, to accept my family's orbit. Theo burned through jobs and friends with the grace of a meteor. Mother trailed behind him with buckets of water, never noticing what drowned. I stood at a distance and clapped when requested. It had been a system, flawed but survivable. The receipt changed something fundamental. If there was a hidden account, then our story had never been honest, and my father's careful stacks of receipts felt like a prayer returned unopened. I watched more closely. Mother's groceries were nicer than mine. Spring strawberries in December, salmon without a discount sticker. She replaced her worn slippers with a plush pair that whispered across the tile. The house smelled like orange peels and cloves. On Sunday, I found a new handbag in the hallway chair, the brand embossed in gold. She called it a gift from a friend, the way people call storms weather, as if naming something gentle could take away its power. I began to count. The rent due, the utilities due, the vet appointment for my old cat, the winter tires I could not afford. In my locker at work, I folded a scrap of paper around the number, repeating it under my breath, daring it to lose meaning. It never did. Isolation grew from tiny choices. I stopped calling Mother every evening. I stopped asking how Thea was doing. I answered her texts with clipped kindness. She noticed. "Mara, are you well?" she asked one afternoon. My voice came out level. "Tired," I said, a word that tasted like ash. The Sunday before Christmas, Theo invited himself to brunch at Mother's. He kicked snow from his boots, talking about a new opportunity that sounded like the last one. Mother smiled at him with warmth I never earned. "You need a little help to get started," she said, and reached for her checkbook. I watched her hand hover, the way a pitcher hovers before pouring, and felt something inside me harden into shape. "Maybe we could all talk about budgets," I said. My voice was quiet. It landed like a teacup on a saucer. Theo snorted.
"Here we go," he said.
"Mara loves a budget." Mother's eyes flicked to me, then away. "This is not the time," she said. "It is Christmas." I stood and gathered plates. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and citrus, warm and bright. My hands shook only once, when I set a plate into the sink and it chimed against the porcelain. I swallowed and thought of my father's pencil marks on legal pads, the way he noted every oil change, every window repair, every bag of nails. That evening, alone in my cold kitchen, I made a decision. I would not stage a scene, not a loud confrontation. I would find the record. I would learn the truth the way my father would have, slowly, carefully, with the lights on. I would not punish. I would not beg. I would let the numbers tell their plain story, and I would let Mother hear it from her own mouth. I slept little. The vow sat in my chest like a smooth stone, heavy but steady. The next morning, I put on my warmest coat and drove to the bank. Blue Ridge Credit Union keeps its lobby modest, a carpet that hides salt, a row of chairs holding winter coats. The teller smiled with the fixed politeness of the over-caffeinated. My breath fogged faintly in the air near the door. I stood in line behind a man depositing cash, the bills crisp like lettuce leaves. When my turn arrived, I asked for a manager. The word felt too large in my mouth. In a small office, a woman named Lila shut the door with a soft click. She wore a navy jacket and a pin shaped like a hawk. I placed my own information on the desk, then asked an impossible question in a calm voice. "I believe there may be an account connected to my mother, Eunice Ellison. I am not listed on it. I am not asking to withdraw, only to know if it exists." Lila folded her hands. "I cannot disclose customer information," she said, and her tone held both apology and policy. "Even to family." I nodded. I had expected the boundary. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder with my father's death certificate, my mother's power of attorney from his final months, and a copy of the probate summary. Records are their own language, and I spoke it with care. "The concern," I said, "is that family resources may have been diverted during his illness. I am not accusing, only trying to understand. If the account is real, I need to know whether it predates his hospice, and whether my mother is sole owner." Lila's jaw tightened slightly, then softened. She looked at the documents, then at me. Something in her face adjusted, as if a lens had finally brought me into focus. "I cannot disclose details," she repeated, "but I can tell you general information in hypothetical terms. Hypothetically, I said and waited. In a hypothetical case, she said, eyes steady. A customer might have opened a savings account 3 years before a spouse's decline. Hypothetically, deposits might have continued during the spouse's illness, and some withdrawals might align with transfers to a third party. Her words were careful enough to pass inspection. My heartbeat did a steady, painful thing. Would that third party, I asked, be a person named Theodore Ellison? Lila said nothing. She reached for a pad and wrote down the name of a consumer protection lawyer, a woman named Harper Stone, whose office overlooked Pack Square. She pushed the paper across the desk with 2 fingers. If someone were concerned about fiduciary duty, she said, this attorney would explain options. Hypothetically. I closed my eyes for a second and felt the room settle. Thank you, I said. I will schedule a consultation. Outside, the air was bright and unsentimental. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel, then called Harper's office. The receptionist placed me on hold for a long minute that taught me patience. We set an appointment for Wednesday afternoon. I ended the call and exhaled so deeply my lungs felt newly invented. On Wednesday, Harper greeted me with a handshake and warm, dry eyes. She listened while I explained. I kept my voice even, my feet planted, my memory exact. When I finished, she asked to see the documents I carried. She read with the focus of a surgeon. Here is what matters, she said. If your mother held power of attorney during your father's illness, she owed him fiduciary duties. That includes transparency. If she moved marital funds into an account titled solely in her name and transferred money to your brother without disclosure, there may be remedies. This is not about punishment. It is about record-keeping and about what belonged to which household account. I do not want her punished, I said. I want the truth placed on a table where it belongs. Harper nodded. We will request statements beginning 5 years prior to diagnosis. If there is resistance, we can subpoena. I recommend a letter first. You will not accuse. You will ask for an accounting. That word has weight. She drafted a letter that afternoon. The font was unremarkable, its power in the tone. It requested records, not apologies. It suggested a 30-day window, not a threat. Harper slid a copy across the desk. This is the baker's bread, she said. Plain, nourishing, inevitable. I held the letter as if it were warm. I imagined Mother opening it at the dining room table, the cloth runner perfect, the light mild and generous. I saw her face, the first small tear in her composed expression. The image hurt and relieved me in equal measure. Will you be my ally in this? I asked, even if the truth unravels us a little. Harper smiled in that way good lawyers do, somewhere between mercy and iron. I will, she said, and I will keep things quiet, unless quiet fails. When I left, the late afternoon sun turned the bare trees into silver wires. I stood by my car and felt steady. The proof would not be dramatic. It would be ink, dates, transaction codes, check images, clean and inescapable. The kind of proof my father would have recognized. The kind of proof that lets a person stand up and speak in a calm, plain voice. Resolve settled over me like a well-fitted coat. I understood the path I would take. I would remain dignified. I would not raise my voice. I would ask for what the record required, and then I would decide how to live with the balance left. The letter went out on Thursday. It arrived at my mother's house the following Monday, tucked between glossy catalogs she never requested. She called me that evening, her voice bright with deliberate cheer. I received something curious, she said. It must be a mistake. It is a request, I said, and my tone was gentle. We need an accounting for the years before and during Dad's illness. I have nothing to hide, she said quickly and then added. This is hurtful. We will let the numbers speak, I said. It is kinder that way. For 2 weeks, her calls came thick with small talk. She asked about the weather, about my patients, about whether I had seen the new display in the hardware store. I answered politely, then returned to my lists. At the end of the 30 days, Harper filed a subpoena. The bank complied with a crisp efficiency that felt almost tender. We met in Harper's office, a narrow room with tall windows and a plant that seemed to applaud the light. My mother sat at one end of the table, her hands folded. Theo arrived late, smelling of cologne and snow. Harper greeted them without warmth or malice. She arranged the statements in careful stacks and began with the earliest date. The room was quiet except for paper sliding and the soft business of breath. Deposits outlined a familiar rhythm: father's pension, a modest annuity, my mother's small salary from the elementary school cafeteria. Then a new pattern emerged: regular transfers from the joint account to a savings account in my mother's name alone. The amounts were not brutal, but they were steady. From that savings account, checks were written to Theo. The memo lines bloomed with soft-flies: loan, emergency, bridge. Harper spoke only to clarify. This transfer occurred 3 weeks after Mr. Ellison's hospitalization, she said. This check was issued the day before the hospice intake. Mother's face was composed, her mouth a delicate line. Theo slouched and then straightened, angry at gravity. I traced the transactions with my eyes, patient and unblinking. The truth unfolded like laundry, piece by piece, until the table was covered. Finally, Harper placed a thin stack aside. These are cash withdrawals totaling $8,000 over 9 months, she said. Mrs. Ellison, do you recall the purpose? Mother looked at me for the first time that hour. I was afraid, she said. I needed security. Your father was slipping away. Theo needed help. You were always so capable. Theo exhaled, a sound between a laugh and a sigh. We're family, he said. Family helps. Family tells the truth, I said, and the room became very still. Harper folded her hands. Mrs. Ellison, no one is calling you a thief. But fiduciary duty requires transparency. The remedy we seek is not criminal. It is restitution to the estate, or at least acknowledgement. We can formalize a repayment plan or adjust the distribution of remaining assets. Mother's chin lifted, as if to meet a wind. I did what I had to do, she said. I protected my son. I felt the old wound open and then close, not with a slam, but with a firm, final click. You left me to protect myself, I said. I did. I will continue to. But the story must be accurate now. Theo leaned forward. So what, he said, his voice sharpening. You want the money back. I looked at him and found an answer that did not require anger. I want a record, I said. I want an agreement that states what occurred and how it will be addressed. I want you to sign your name to the truth. Harper slid a prepared document across the table, its language precise. It acknowledged the transfers, the checks to Theo, the duty owed during father's illness. It proposed that any future inheritance due to Theo be reduced by the amount already advanced. It suggested a modest monthly contribution from mother to a fund designated for father's memorial scholarships at the high school woodshop, a place that still smelled like him. Silence settled like dust. Mother read, her finger moving under each line. Theo stared at the window without seeing. I waited. The only sound was the plant's leaves brushing the glass when a vent kicked on. Mother picked up the pen. Her hand trembled once, then stilled.
She signed.
Theo hesitated longer, drama staging itself at the edge of his mouth, then signed with a weary flourish. The black ink looked both thin and indelible. Harper gathered the papers. Thank you, she said. We will file this with the estate summary. No public spectacle. I stood. My legs felt sure. I am going home, I said quietly. Mother's voice followed me, small and human. Mara, she said, do you hate me? I turned, steady and soft. I do not hate you, I said. I am repairing the record. It is not the same thing. Justice did not thunder. It whispered. The room breathed, and then we left it as we had found it, with chairs tucked close and nothing broken. Winter finally loosened. The morning I first opened my windows, the air smelled like thawed earth and wet leaves. I brewed coffee and stood barefoot on the tile, warming my hands around the mug. Light feathered across the counter, simple and generous. The cat tracked a bird's shadow along the wall. There was no triumphant score, No grand reveal, only space where fear had been. The agreement held. Theo stopped calling me for money. He called less, in fact, and perhaps that was a new honesty, too. Mother mailed a check each month to the scholarship fund Harper established with the school. The first award went to a quiet senior who had spent afternoons in the woodshop sanding mistakes into mastery. He held the certificate with both hands like it contained heat. At the ceremony, the sawdust smell made my eyes prickle, but I did not cry. Father would have liked the boy's steady shoulders. Mother and I spoke on Sundays. Our conversations were careful, then warmer, like stepping into a lake 1 inch at a time until the body remembered water. She told me about the tulips she had planted, red and white in perfect rows. I told her about a patient who loved crossword puzzles and pretended not to notice when I slipped her a hint. We did not talk about money. We did not need to. The record lived in a drawer at Harper's office and in my mother's monthly habit. The truth had been accounted for, and that mattered more than apology. I changed in ways a mirror would not show. I began to take my own life as seriously as I took my work. I asked my landlord for a heating repair and firm, documented messages. When he delayed, I calmly reported the issue to code enforcement and copied him on the email. The repair arrived within a week, and the radiators began to sing their mild, comforting song. I moved the Apple magnet to a lower corner of the fridge and replaced it with a corkboard. On it, I pinned 2 photos of Father in his workshop and a copy of the scholarship letter with the amount circled. In the evenings, I started building one of Father's unfinished birdhouses. The pieces had waited in a shoebox lined with tissue paper, his pencil notes still faint on the edges. I sanded the cedar, the smell bright and clean, and watched the grain reveal itself like a story finally told in order. My hands learned the rhythm of small brads tapping into place. I worked slowly, checking angle and fit, letting patience be the pride of the thing. On the first warm Saturday, I hung the finished house on a nail outside my kitchen window. It swayed in the wind and then steadied. Mother came to see it the following week. She wore a gray sweater and the old, sensible shoes I remembered from my childhood. We stood in the small yard while the birdhouse turned a little, catching light. She reached for my hand and did not say a speech. "It is good," she said, her voice small and true. I nodded. Goodness felt like a quiet bench, solid and kind, nothing like vindication, everything like rest. Before she left, she pressed a folded paper into my palm. It was a copy of her will, revised after the agreement. My eyes moved over the clauses carefully. She had included the scholarship fund again, a full page of clean language guiding small sums toward future hands. "I want you to know where things stand," she said. "I plan to be around a long while, but I want you to have this." "Thank you," I said, and meant every syllable. That night, I read the will again at the table, the birdhouse visible through the window like a small promise. The neighborhood quieted. A child laughed 2 yards over. Somewhere, a dog barked once, and then remembered the hour. I felt the calm weight of rightness settle again. Not dramatic, not proud, simply present. I learned something I should have known sooner. Quiet revenge is not vengeance at all. It is accuracy. It is saying what happened with the lights on, then choosing your steps with dignity. I had not punished my mother. I had asked her to stand beside facts and keep standing.
She did.
It gave us a path back to each other, not through sweetness, but through trust measured in statements, dates, and checks that cleared. I returned to the hospice the next week after a few days off. A new patient liked to watch the elm outside her window. We sat in silence together as the leaves moved. "It is lovely," she said, and her voice floated for a moment before settling on the blanket. I thought of my father teaching me to hold a nail straight. I thought of Harper's calm hands smoothing paper. I thought of my mother counting tulips, honest now about how many she planted. On my way home, I bought a small packet of sunflower seeds. I pressed them into the soil along the fence, each one a claim that light exists and can be trusted. The dirt under my fingernails felt like proof. Life grows where truth has room. When the first birds found the house, I stood by the sink and watched them measure the opening with their bright, intelligent eyes. They seemed to approve. The cat watched without malice, tail curled like a comma. I washed my mug and set it on the rack. The day thinned into evening. Peace did not arrive as a wave. It arrived as a table already cleared, a floor swept, a room that fit. I breathed and could taste cedar. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.